Welcome to Mojo Talks. I'm Eric, and today on Context is King, I'm joined as always by Ash. How you doing, Ash?
Very good.
So, we've talked about BuzzFeed and Vice and VOX, and once again, VOX is back in the news. So, last month, CEO Jim Bankoff, he came out and said that they hit their their revenue targets. But then just this week, he came out and announced that they're cutting 5% headcount, which doesn't seem huge, but that's 50 people.
It's basically like mostly 90% of WatchMojo's.
Right. So, and he cited moving away from native social video. So, what's native social video?
In one word, it's Facebook. As his memo got further leaked throughout the day, he actually cited Facebook specifically. I mean, look, basically, you've seen on your feed until fairly recently a lot of videos that are short, shareable, snackable. And intended for a social media platform like Facebook. You may also see them in other places, like whether it's LinkedIn or on Twitter, but it's predominantly for Facebook. And the idea is, look, Facebook's got 2 billion users, and if you follow the audience, you're hoping that the dollars will flow. The problem is it's Facebook's platform, and they're not really sharing much revenue with creators.
So does that mean Vox is in trouble? And anyone who's kind of using this, the snackable stuff?
No, not all. If the question is Vox in trouble? No. Other companies that went down that path, perhaps, maybe. So I did a little bit of forensic investigation here.
CSI.
There you go, basically. So January 10th, 11th is when Facebook announced publicly that they were going to make changes to their feeds. Probably a large publisher like Vox knew that before. Probably some of the changes had already been implemented. And then Jim Bankoff sent out his State of the Union email on January 31st. So you got to assume that by then he had already seen changes to the Facebook ecosystem and traffic and views. I'm guessing we were doing budgets in end of December, early January, so a bigger company like Vox with its board and outside investors, they were probably also doing budgeting. And my guess is that by then, he actually wanted to do two things. I think he wanted to get ahead of this eventual news that he knew the writing on the wall, that it made no sense to stay the course and keep putting money into Facebook in these short videos. But two, I think he wanted to get ahead of the bad news and control the message to say, look, this is a unique thing that's really specific to us not wanting to put further investment in these Facebook short clips. We're going to be putting money elsewhere, so I don't want the media and the street to think, oh my God, Vox is in trouble, which is actually pretty smart. I think that's the good news for Vox. It does suck for the employees that were affected, but I mean, I don't think that Facebook, short videos on Facebook was really going to be a sustainable thing anyway.
But, a lot of people on Twitter, I think, were criticizing the pivot to video, which is something that, I think we kind of prided ourselves on in the first place, to some extent.
Well, I mean, not really, because we were nothing else.
I guess we were always video.
That's it. I mean, I actually, back in 2006 when we started, I would point to organizations like Gawker and many others saying if you have a successful owned and operated web property that produces articles, it's really not going to be possible for you to do videos as well because it costs more, the payoff is much later. It's also the discovery works very differently. You're relying less on Google search engine. You have to kind of publish out on these platforms. YouTube was nascent, but I mean, you had the Goobas and the Revers and the MySpaces and the Crapsters and all these other places. Well, most of those existed. So I've always consistently said you cannot do both. That's why we are pure video. We're pure play video. So no, I don't think we made the pivot to video. We're primed for video. That's what we do. That's our bread and butter.
So what does it say about Facebook?
Well, I mean, look, I think what this says about Facebook is that last week we touched about the whole walled garden on Facebook versus Google's open web worldview. And I think if you go back to AdSense and Google's pedigree and their DNA, they very much believe fundamentally in sharing revenues. Google, as it became this awesome thing, didn't make more revenue on Google.com. It used to take its search, its paid advertising, paid text links, and then it would kind of give them to publishers and say, put these on your website, and if people click on them, we'll give you a cut. When they bought YouTube, it took them a while to figure out the copyright issue, the piracy issue, and obviously the monetization, but it did figure that out. It did figure things pretty quickly, and it always from day one paid out revenue to partners, such as WatchMojo disclosure. So I think that's the fundamental difference, right? So Facebook, their DNA is All this stuff about connecting the world, okay, true, but it's a means to an end. It's like a nicotine and cigarette relationship. Facebook cares about just extracting data from users and selling hyper-targeted ads to advertisers to keep goosing that revenue machine. So I've said this now, I'm a broken disc player, but Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook will never share revenue the way Google does. So that's that. But to your early point, I think it's important to talk about this concept of pivot to video. Does it work or not? No. The pivot to video, if you were Mashable, it made no sense whatsoever for you to be producing articles and then all of a sudden reorging your organization trying to get the same team to pump out videos. Like a journalist that's comfortable behind a typewriter or a computer, that is like a wordsmith that likes to write articles, getting them to do a video made no sense. It made no sense when New York Times or USA Today tried to do it over the last 10 years. And it also made just as little sense for a company like Mashable to do it. I'm not here to, well, actually, that's not true. I am, I guess, here to criticize occasionally. I will also say that I personally think that what Mashable, and I like Cheddar, I think John Steinberg is a very smart guy. I think they could really do some interesting things in the post-cable era. But I also think that it's kind of foolish for them that you go to Mashable, you go to Cheddar, you go to Business Insider, they basically take the same videos, which are ads or short videos about whatever product and service, and they just slap their logo on it and they put it out on their feeds. That is not that different than what Vox was doing, which, okay, instead of producing original content, you're just taking content that exists, but then you're all becoming diluted versions. You're all becoming vegetable, like vanilla, you're blurring into the walls one next to another.
Vegetable lasagna?
Vegetable, yeah. I'm not calling them vegetable lasagna, but I think it would be more interesting for them to develop their own distinct voices. Now that said, so I don't think the pivot to video, and then the last reason why the pivot to video doesn't work is, look, 99% of content that makes sense to be delivered via article format should remain in an article format.
So we've talked about the good and the bad. What about the ugly?
Well, the ugly is also, look, I mean, I was reading Josh Marshall of Talking Points memo. He scorched Facebook. I'm not saying this, but he's saying it. Let's point it out. Quote, even among the big tech platform monopolies, Facebook has shown itself to be a uniquely unreliable partner. We've seen back in the, end quote, we've seen back in the day when companies like Upworthy tried to build their business on Facebook, and then a few algorithm changes, boom, they're like, their knees are cut off. But if you remember, Facebook helped Zynga grow a business, and then Facebook killed Zynga, directly, indirectly, to be determined. But so you just have to be careful, right? I mean, that's Facebook's trajectory. That's their history.
Well, then I don't know how to frame this, but if you think about it, aren't we just as exposed and I guess in a vulnerable position when it comes to YouTube?
Well, look, I mean, people ask me about the reliance on YouTube all the time, but going back to that DNA of sharing revenue, YouTube has zero interest to be in the content business, but yet they need content for their platform, YouTube, to flourish. So I would say in terms of degrees of risk, and that's what it boils down to in business, I could live with the risk we take on YouTube, but yes, it's a fair observation. And it is a risk, but it's more managed. I'm just not comfortable building a business on Facebook. I love Facebook. I think Mark Zuckerberg's really smart. But when I put myself in his shoes, I understand why he does what he does. So you just have to be careful. You can't assume that YouTube and Facebook, or Google and Facebook are the same. Google did one time kill, essentially, a company, Demand Media. But that's because Demand Media was stupid enough to go out there and brag that they were gaming YouTube's search engine optimization.
It's kind of not the thing you want to do.
So if you're, like we don't do clickbait. We've always tried to be, ethical about things. We don't do, like if we do top 10 skyscrapers, it's top 10 skyscrapers. It's not top 10 phallic objects you'll never believe we're counting down, So I think that's the thing. If you abide by the rules and you respect Google's terms and conditions and understand their sensitivities, you'll be fine.
Okay, so divest from Facebook, is that?
No, actually now that's the ultimate contrarian take. I think we succeeded on YouTube because at a point, 2011, 2012, where a lot of people said, we don't think YouTube is going to be viable in the long term, they walked away, we went against the grain, we didn't follow the institutional imperative. You got to see the forest through the trees, and you got to be able to play the long game. So be smart about it. Don't put 50 people on Facebook snackable videos, put a couple, see what happens.
Context is king. Thanks a lot, Ash. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time.